Welcome to Mary's Cakes and Bakes.
Welcome to Mary and Cakes and Bakes. I'm Ellie. This is Mary.
Hi. What are we making today?
Today we're making the banana bread.
Banana bread. Do you ever get too many bananas and then they just start going gross and they look like this? Wah, wah. Gross. But all is not lost because you can make banana bread. What do you think? Yeah?
But not with yucky banana bread because that is gross.
But we can use bananas that look like that because we mash them up and it doesn't matter. So, ta-da! You mash up the bananas and put them in banana bread. Should we get started?
Yes.
Say, let's get started.
Let's get started.
Let's get started. This is my grandma's recipe, hence her picture right here. She died a few years ago and I miss her terribly. But every time I think of her, I think of baking and sweets and all kinds of things. Any of my cousins will tell you the same, that she always had something sweet. Even after she had diabetes, she would cook up cookies and things and freeze them and get them out when we were coming over. So I don't know about you guys, but Grandma and baking are kind of synonymous in my book. So I'm going to share with you today her banana bread recipe. Tools and equipment that you will need for this recipe.
Equipment that you will need.
I am tripling this recipe because I have so many bananas to use.
Yes.
So I will tell you what ingredients I'm using and the quantities, but I will put the original recipe in the description below. So today we're going to have 5 1/4 cups of flour. This is just regular all-purpose flour.
So
To your flour, you will add
you will add
1.5 teaspoons of salt,
Can I hold it?
2 1/4 teaspoons of baking soda. Go ahead and dump that in the flour. Perfect.
This.
We will also be using
We're gonna have 2 cups of sugar, 6 eggs, and this.
Yes, that's this. We are
Banana
using
bread.
1/2 cup of butter and 1/2 cup of coconut oil. Finally, we have 3 cups of bananas. This worked out to be about 6 bananas for me. So I also forgot, I'm going to be putting chocolate chips in mine. I love chocolate, so I put chocolate in mine. I don't have a specific measurement for the chocolate chips. I just kind of dump them in until I like it. You want to make sure you have your paddle attachment on your mixer if you're using a mixer. So to begin, you will cream your shortening and sugar, or in our case, butter and coconut oil and sugar. You'll cream those all together in your mixer. Sugar in. I sometimes like to start just mixing together the coconut oil and the butter real quick. Just gonna dump my sugar in there. Whoa, don't do that. Make sure you start out slow. Don't make a mess like me. There's your moral for today. This shouldn't take too long, this step. To cream it together, you just want to make sure it's all mixed in really well. Your creamed shortening and sugar, or in our case, coconut oil, butter, and sugar, should look something like this. Next, we're going to add our eggs, and the recipe says to blend them until well combined and fluffy, which I really like. Once all of your eggs are added, it should look something like this. Okay, so once all that is incorporated and mixed in, you're going to start adding in your flour mixture. This is where you're going to add the baking soda and salt as well. So it's right on the edge here for me. You're going to start with 1/3 of the flour, mix it all in, 1/2 the banana, mix it all in, etc. Start by chopping this kind of right there to make sure my soda and salt get in. So do about 1/3 of the flour, and this is not like rocket science here. This is just kind of, my grandma rarely wrote recipes down at all, so I'm actually really fortunate I have this one. Once your flour is a little bit incorporated, you can turn it a little higher just to make sure it's all really well mixed in really well. Now you're going to add 1/2 of your smooshed bananas. So about 1/2 the bananas going in. And turn it on slow. And then once they're starting to mix in a little bit, turn it a little higher to make sure it really gets mixed in really well. Okay, and now's a good time to use your rubber spatula again. Scrape the sides and make sure that everything's getting incorporated. So we're adding in about 1/2 of what the flour was left. I probably add a little bit more. Once it's mixed in a little, turn it up a little higher, mix it in. The important part is you're going to want to end on the flour. Add in the rest of my banana mixture. Get those bananas mixed in really well. Again, start on low. Once it's on low for a little bit, you can turn a little higher. Finally, you will add in the rest of your flour. Get that mixed in. So again, start on low. Give it a final scrape. My grandma never added anything else in. This is always how she just left it. So once everything's incorporated, it should look like this. It's kind of it looks like bread dough. My grandma always did this in a bread pan. I have this thing about muffins. I really like the kind of like little bite-sized serving size. So I always just put this in muffin tin. You can do your own banana bread in your bread pan. You want to put it in, it's probably going to end up being in there for about an hour. You'll want to start checking it at half an hour. For the muffins, I typically put them in for about 15 or 20 minutes and start checking them then. They usually won't quite be done by 10 or 15 minutes, but you don't want to overdo them. You don't want to burn them. So this is where you mix your chocolate chips in. Again, I just dump this in. I really like chocolate, you guys. This is going to be really chocolatey. That's how I like my muffins here. Okay. This is about what it looks like when I'm done adding in my chocolate chips. There's a lot of chocolate chips in there because that's what I like. I'm all about the chocolate. Once everything's all mixed together, you're going to want to get it in your muffin tins or in your bread pan. I'll do a generous spoonful and just plop it in there. You don't want to fill these too full or else you'll get that bulge on the top. I like to have 2 muffin tins on hand. I have one baking in the oven, then I have the next one ready to go. Once that one is done baking, you'll be able to just switch it out with the one that's ready. But also, if you put your batter into an already warm muffin tin, then your cake or your bread or whatever is going to start baking before you actually get it in the oven, and that way that will end up burning it on the bottom especially. Another trick that I use, you'll get your hot muffin tin out once it's done baking. I usually will set it out on the stovetop for about 5 minutes to let it cool, and then I will remove those muffins or cupcakes or whatever, put them on a cooling rack to let them cool completely. And then, in order to be able to reuse that tin more quickly, it's still going to be pretty hot. I just take your oven mitt that you've been wearing, and I just turn the tray over and run it under cold water, and that way it's ready to go again. And it's not going to hurt your cupcakes as you decide to put them in, like when you put them in. So I'm going to put these in the oven. Thanks for joining us on